صل على محمد يا ربي صل عليه وسلم
يا ربي صل على محمد حبيبك الشافع المشفع
يا ربي صل على محمد حبيب.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على ختم النبيين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, my name is Ibrahim Whitney. We're doing Ashifa bi Ta'rif Huquq al-Mustafa. I call Healing with the Chosen One. And we are just have only one single part left in the section which deals with his manly virtue. And this is the following. Part of his manliness was that he forbade people. This is very strange. Listen here. He forbade people to blow on food before they eat it. So you have your food, it's very hot. You want to blow on it and so you can eat it. He forbade this. SubhanAllah. And how is this from manly virtue? Something or drink as well. So, you blow into it. No. Well, one aspect of manliness is patience and self-control and discipline, and to be hurried, right? To be walking or in a very hurried way, like you're coming to the prayer, and to be kind of doing that walk between a walk and a run, that kind of rush. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam forbade this as well. You're taking away from your dignity, and you're doing something which is actually rather silly in order to try and rush to something. Whether it's food or even something that's worthwhile like prayer, you should go with dignity in a way that is befitting to the human being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored. And he told people to eat from the food that was nearest to them. So not to take from far away. People should today, and I'll say a third time, today, people should be eating off of a single plate. This is not something that should have been left in the past. A family, or you having company, whatever it may be, you should eat from a single tray or a single plate. You should not have individual plates. And when you're eating from a single plate, you should eat from that food which is nearest to you. Eat from whatever is closest to you. This would be the best for you. And this does not mean that if, for example, you have a plate where there's a certain dish here and a certain dish here and a certain dish here, that does not mean that you can only eat from one dish that's directly in front of you. You can eat from the dish which is on the far side of the plate, but you reach from what is nearest to it. So, for example, there's multiple pieces of, maybe there's rice and potatoes or something on one side. There's chicken over on another side. It doesn't mean someone there only eats chicken, someone here only eats rice. But it means you don't reach over past several pieces of chicken to the far side to get what you think is the juiciest piece of chicken for yourself. You take what piece of chicken is there, you take what is nearest to you as to whatever food you are reaching for. So if there's different types of food, you can reach to whatever type of food you want, but you eat from what is nearest of it. That's the explanation, so we have a correct understanding. And he commended the use of the siwak. So the siwak is the toothbrush which was used by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It is a dried out root from the arak tree, but anything which as a toothbrush will fulfill the sunnah. So using a modern plastic toothbrush will fulfill the sunnah. However, the best thing to do would be to use a root, a dried out twig, particularly that from the arak tree, as this is the nearest to the imitation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam also encouraged people to clean between their fingers and toes and observe all practices of the fitrah. there are a number of practices of the fitrah, and we won't go into all of those. One of which is especially controversial in these times, which is circumcision. Extremely controversial. There are many people who, for whatever reason, have decided to wage a full war against the fitrah, and including the circumcision, particularly circumcision of females. They have decided to make this into an enormous moral issue. It's the most important moral issue. You call it mutilation. In fact, they call the circumcision mutilation. Ma'adallah. Strange what these people come up with. Of course, if someone were to perform a circumcision, whether on a male or a female, that was far beyond what is intended by the word circumcision, to cut off far more than they're supposed to, then that would be mutilation. And that is something which is wrong, and something which is important that we separate from the meaning of circumcision, which is actually a very healthy practice, and there's a lot of evidence for that. Though, if you were to look, I don't want to go too deep into it. It deserves a whole entire lecture on its own, because this is an aspect of our religion and the fitrah, and it is something which is established in our sharia, circumcision for males and females. So Rasulullah ﷺ encouraged all of these aspects. And again, what is the siwak? What is cleaning between the fingers and toes? What is the circumcision and other aspects of the fitrah, like shaving the armpits and the privates? Those are all to do with cleanliness, right? And cleanliness is half of our iman. Cleanliness is half of our iman. So really being in a state where the human body is so clean and pure is very important to our religion. Subhanallah. And this actually concludes the section which deals with his manliness. And we turn now to the section which discusses his abstinence regarding things of this world. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلومه في الدارين آمين. Our author says, and we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on him and benefits us through his knowledge in this world and the next. It says, more than enough traditions have already been mentioned in the subject of his aestheticism, which is, aestheticism is his, the word in Arabic is actually far better, meaning zuhud, and it means to consider something to be not very valuable. So he considered, it's not that he considered the world to be very valuable, but he was disciplined and stayed away from it. He didn't consider the world to have much value. This is sincere in the heart. So if your heart is stuck, then even if you leave in practice, you have not experienced asceticism. So it says here, more than enough traditions have already been mentioned, and we have, alhamdulillah, 67 lessons or so where we have been teaching this book, alhamdulillah. And there's a lot of content there for you to study and to take notes and to reflect and to put into practice. On the subject of asceticism in the course of this account. So, meaning so far in this book. Now, I will mention a quick story so we understand asceticism. This is a story that comes from the great nation of the Maghrib. The story goes that a man was following his sheikh, and they were practicing zuhud. And they went to the ocean and would fish, and they would gather whatever food that they could, and they would eat. And they lived very, very simple, minimal lives. They were living in absolute poverty, absolute detachment from this world. And the sheikh, he told him, you must go to my sheikh. and visit him and ask him for some advice from me. So the sheikh sent his student. He said, you go to my sheikh and ask him for advice for me, the teacher. So the student does as he's told, and he heads off in the direction that he was told. And when he arrives to the place that he was told, he was very surprised. He was looking up. These people were living homeless, sleeping rough, eating whatever they could find. And he was looking up and he was seeing this enormous mansion with servants. And there's a servant at the door, and he's just shocked. He said, I think I might be in the wrong place. I'm looking for so-and-so. He says, no, this is his manor, opens the door, lets him in, welcome, sits down, and there's an abundance of food and different kinds of things. And he's absolutely surprised by what he's seeing. So he looks very embarrassed. And the sheikh, he realizes this, but he doesn't make him feel out of place. And he says to him, I was sent here to try and ask for advice. He's thinking to himself, how am I asking advice from this person? What could he possibly teach us? This person who is engrossed in the dunya. He's got this enormous, lavish life. How could I possibly get any advice from servants and everything? And he says, my teacher, he sent me to ask advice from you for him, please. And he said to him, very sternly, he said, my advice is, when will you get this world out of your heart? When will you get the dunya out of your heart? What's the matter with you? Get the dunya out of your heart. And this man was completely just shocked. He could not, what are you talking about? But he, alhamdulillah, had at least enough training where he did not completely humiliate himself as an ignorant person. But he kept his tongue and he said, okay, I don't understand what's happening. And I'm bewildered by it. I don't understand it, but I'm not going to open my mouth and say foolish things. So he accepted the advice, accepted the hospitality. He went back to his master and he told his teacher, he said, Sheikh, this is the advice that I was given to pass on to you. And his teacher began to just weep and cry and cry and cry. And the student was very shocked by this. And he said, what does this all mean? I don't understand. Yeah, Sheikh. He said to him, the reason that he is living like that, or rather the reason I'm still living like this, is because I haven't broken my desire yet. I haven't broken my love of the dunya. I still have a love of the dunya. I haven't broken that. They say zuhud is a bab. It's a door that you walk through, right? Zuhud, the actions of zuhud, living in extreme poverty, giving away all of your possessions and living in a very simple way, that is a bab. That is a way that you break your desire and you enter into the state of true zuhud, which is where you don't even have a consideration for the world anymore. You think it is nothing. And he said, if you were to go to that man and you were to ask him for anything, he would give it to you. If you asked him to give his entire mansion to you, and you just said, give me your mansion and your servants, he would just give it all to you without even a hesitation or even his heart to hesitate. Allah Ta'ala can give different people things. But the love and the attachment, the possessiveness, this is the problem. Rather than gratitude, he was experiencing complete gratitude, shukr for everything around him. Shukr and qana'ah. He was always grateful, he was always content. And he was never desiring anything. And he never had a big opinion of it. He always had a little opinion of the dunya. But if you have someone else who is poor or middle class or lower middle class, and all they think about is social mobility, all they think about is getting a better job, all they think about is getting more money, all they think about is what they don't have materially, even though this person is not living in enjoying those blessings, he is guilty and sinful of indulgence and obsession with the dunya and love of the dunya. So I hope you understand the inner reality of love of the dunya and the inner reality of zuhud is very different from the outer realities of love of the dunya and the outward actions that are associated with love of the dunya and the outward actions which are associated with zuhud. So this is a brief explanation for us to understand the meaning of this word here. Now, our author says, it is sufficient to say that when he was content with little of this world and he turned away from its fruits. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was always content. And you can see this is one of the qualities of someone who is in a state of zuhud. Whether they have a lot or they have a little, they're always content. And they don't care any mind about the fruits of the dunya. When he received wealth and he would receive enormous amounts of wealth, his income was substantial, but he never kept it for one night. He would not sleep, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he had a single currency, whether it's dinar, dirham, or whether we're using pounds, or whether we're using euros, or whether we're using dollars, or whatever denomination of currency, he would not sleep, and he had a denomination of currency. Always he had given everything away. Whatever he received that day, he had given it back away. He would turn away from the fruits of the world. And the world was handed to him, lock, stock, and barrel, piled up in heaps in front of him. MashaAllah, this is a very good translation to help us understand. During the course of his conquests. Yet when he died, his armor was still in a state of pawn with a Jew in order to provide for his family. So when he died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is his nature, he was constantly giving so much. He would even give more than he had to give. And he would take out loans, not at interest, but he would take out loans or pawn something. For example, you have a piece of armor. He did have a piece of armor because he was a warrior. You have some possession of value, would pawn that to get the money just for the end of the day. SubhanAllah. Not only just for himself, but even he would come into debt. He would take loans to pay charity to someone. If someone came asking for charity and he didn't have enough money, he would go into debt and put his name on the line to get the money to pay the charity. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is how he was, and how little he thought of the world, and how little he thought of poverty. And who are we? How are we? It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to think about our own state, and we should feel embarrassed, but not in an embarrassment that makes us paralyzed, but an embarrassment that hopefully lights that fire underneath us to get away from the hellfire and to climb up that rope. And we should feel intensely motivated to transform the way that we live our lives. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us of all of our shortcomings and forgive us and purify us and clean us away from the diseases of our heart, and to adorn us with the beautiful qualities of His beloved and our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen, 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 Allahumma ameen. Until next time, inshallah ta'ala, and we continue this book, please make dua that Allah ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to complete this entire book, because we are only just getting started with it, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.